I made a mistake, okay? I picked up this book thinking it was a historical fiction. I read like the back first paragraph and I thought, oh, okay, great, this sounds really interesting. And I did not read the rest of the book. I did not read about what the genre was. I went in so blind. We are back for another Christian review of regular books, and today we are discussing What Hunger? Let's get into it. For those of you who have never seen one of these videos before, here's how it's gonna go down. First, I do my regular review, what you know and love to expect from a book review, star rating, and my own personal opinion, but then we get into my Christian review, and that's where I go over the basic pieces of a book that may or may not have a fellow believer, or frankly, anyone wanting to read it. I give far more caveats and any more information you may need at the video that's pinned at the top of the playlist, or it's here somewhere, so you can click on over there. For now, let's go ahead and get into my regular review. What Hunger was an ARC that was sent to me by the publisher, and thank you so much for the opportunity to read this book. I made a mistake, okay? I picked up this book thinking it was a historical fiction. I read like the back first paragraph and I thought, oh, okay, great, this sounds really interesting. And I did not read the rest of the book. I did not read about what the genre was. I went in so blind. And this book is a horror book, which makes it the first ever horror book I've ever read. I ended up actually really enjoying it. I think it was so fascinating. And although the book was considered horror in genre, the theme that played out over the course of this book had far more depth to it than just a standard horror book that you're getting in for the gory, interesting detail. Ultimately, the themes included things like female rage, teenagers discovering like self-discovery into their independence and who they are, family dynamics, and grief and the loss of a loved one. It had so many interesting aspects that I did not anticipate even reading the first paragraph, which again, shame on me, okay? Usually I don't go into books blind. I cannot believe I did that. But I ended up really enjoying my experience, and I definitely wouldn't have done that if I had known it was horror, so I'm glad that I picked it up anyways. I will say that there are some very dark themes that are explored throughout the course of this book, and so I don't know that it's a book for everyone, but I did appreciate the author's writing style. There is another book out there that once I realized what this book was about really reminded me of, and that book is called Night Bitch. It was about a woman who had become a mom and was discovering her own personality and interest in a way that was eating raw meat. And that is very much the story of what happens in What Hunger is this teenage girl going through immense grief, ends up trying raw meat and really enjoying it, and then kind of discovering a desire for that irony taste of blood and raw meat. It's fascinating and interesting, and ultimately I really did appreciate the story once I figured out what was happening, and I ultimately rated it 3.5 stars. If you're wanting to see everything that I'm reading and rating in real time, you can do so by following me on Goodreads. I'm also on Instagram, TikTok, and I do have my own YouTube channel, so if you want to see more of my day-to-day reading and life journey, you can follow me there. All the links are down in the description box. Now let's go ahead and get into my Christian review. The first category I always love to touch on is spice or smut because it's popular, and there is no explicitly described spicy scenes. However, there is a scene throughout the course of the book that has to do with sexual violence. Although not explicitly described, it is described enough. So if that's a trigger for you, it's something good to know. The second category is explicit language, and yes, there is a fair bit of explicit language. It's very specific and targeted towards this teenager who has very intense anger and rage. The third category is violence and gore, and there is not a ton of violence. There's a few scenes throughout the book that have violence. However, there is definitely gore. This is a horror book, so you're gonna get much more gore. I'll be honest with you, I personally would not have picked up this book and read it had I known that it was horror, so that should answer the question. It's definitely very gory. If you are a person who enjoys horror though, you may enjoy this book. The final category that I'll say, and I don't want to give away pieces of the book, but so that you understand, is there are just generally dark themes. I wouldn't say anything is spiritually dark-ish. However, there's just a general darkness over the story of the book and the grief and the rage that this teenager is experiencing and how she chooses to use an outlet to deal with that rage and grief that is dark and sad. And so if that's something that would be hard for you to read, it's definitely something good to know. Ultimately, I think it would be fine for anyone ages 16 and up who has already read horror books or wants to be reading horror books, that you as a parent are okay with reading horror books, because again, I think that's a category in and of itself. As always, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can stay up to date on all these Christian reviews of regular books, plus me and my mom's podcast, The Journey We Share. We always want to remind you of this because it's a free way for you to let us know that the content we're providing for for you is helpful. It also helps us continue to do what we're doing and provide you the content that's going to be the most useful for you. And as always, I cannot wait until we see you on the next one.